Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to episode 36 of Fundraising BIDness Talk. My name is Patrick Cyber. I'm your host and the owner and lead auctioneer for G Events based in Beaverton, Oregon, but involved in events throughout the United States. And it's great to be with you again as we gather every Wednesday right here to chat about things that are happening in the fundraising auction business. I am hopeful our good friend George Franco is going to be joining us today. He was having a little technical challenge here a few minutes ago, so we'll see if he is able to join in with us. And he's there. There's there's George. George is here. It's me, but I'm sure, but I'm trying to get in. I know you are, buddy, and I'm going to encourage you to use a Chrome browser or a computer. You can do it on your iPhone too. Just should be able to take that link and post it into your browser, and you will see you. I will see you in the backstage area and I will bring you into the show when you're ready, George. So keep clicking on it. No stress, no big deal. You might find this hard to believe. I'm a bit of an oxygen thief anyway. So it's easy for me to keep talking. It's a big week here at G Events as we wait for George. We're in the middle of the fall season. It's October, it's getting darker, but we're raising money, and that's the best part, is that we're having a lot of success raising money in these challenging times. And I want to talk about that a little bit today because I think the times are in many cases. I was going to visit with George about this, and we will as soon as he's able to join us in the studio. But I want to. I want to chat with you a little bit. Hey, there's our good friend Tim Stewart joining us. Tim and I worked together last night. Actually, Tim was selling a piece of property and had a lot of success with that. And there's my buddy George. But hey, Tim, great to see you, buddy. And notice how stable my internet connection is now. So it's great to see you, Timmy. And great job last night. That was a lot of fun. So hey, without further ado, I want to bring in my good friend George Franco. George, what's happening, buddy?
Don't you just love it?
Yeah, technology.
Oh my gosh.
And we're live. So I'm going to have you make sure those headphones are plugged in because I'm getting a little feedback.
There it is.
There you
Okay.
go. Now you're in. Hey, George, what's the weather like in Atlanta, Georgia today?
Rainy where I'm at. There's a tornado warning. Oh, what is that? 60 miles down the road in Forsyth, the city of Forsyth, Monroe County. So we've been having lots of rains for the last few days.
It sounds like Oregon, right? So it's only appropriate you and I would be chatting about that.
Yeah, but I lived in the Seattle area. That Oregon mist is a little different than our torrential Georgia downpours.
Yeah. No, it's fantastic. So, George, you lived in the Seattle area. You were in the news media, and
I was.
and you have a rich background in broadcasting, and what a wonderful I think I see several broadcasters around the country, whether it's Bill Minish or yourself, or guys who have made that jump from the news media to the auction business. But it never came in more handy than this year, huh?
Oh my gosh, just today and yesterday and probably the next couple of days, we're talking about, do we go live? Do we go virtual? Do we go hybrid? What if this happens? How do we change? What about if some people are afraid of COVID? What if everybody wants to be there? There's so many what ifs. So absolutely, because you're right. I came out of television, so I get what's happening with the streaming video and the cameras and all that, because when I was in television, it was 10 years ago or so that streaming video came into existence. Remember before that you had the big trucks with the big masts and everything, and the big satellite trucks. It was a semi truck literally to go on the road for anything big like satellite trucks. So I understood a long time ago that the transmission of broadcasts and the delays and everything like that, it was really cool because we would be on television and they'd say, George, you got about a 20-second delay. So I'd have a producer in my ear say, okay, we timed out your lead. The anchor man's going to talk for 20 seconds. When I say go, you go. And I would start talking with the anchor man in my head and trying to avoid that and just keep doing my spiel. And I'll be darned if you could not tell on television that there was any delay because the way it was back timed and the way it was produced. And it's kind of the same thing we're doing now. It's an interesting set of circumstances of how we find ourselves.
Yeah, and it's I have so many things to talk to you about, and that's terrific insight because that's one of the subjects that I've said often on the show here that when we first dove into this in March 2020, I think that's how you and I first met. Was
Hmm.
I was very proud of the benefit auctioneer community in coming together and auctioneers kind of taking the bull by the horns and hosting Zoom calls with other auctioneers throughout the United States and literally showing each other and sharing with each other best practices and what we were doing. And you were instrumental in helping educate our benefit auctioneer community who had not spent as much time on the camera that you had, educating us on how to respond and how to deal with it. And it was fantastic. But I was really proud of our community in making that happen. And I think it was incredibly valuable for our benefiting nonprofits, don't you think?
Well, you're very kind to say that. I hope that I could shed some light on what was a very confusing time, still confusing for a lot of nonprofits. I bet you're seeing the same thing. I'm having folks call me who said, "Oh, we had to postpone last year, or we canceled last year, and now we're trying it again." And now they're thinking, "Are we going to do this again?" And I say, "Let me get rid of that." And I say, "Don't do that. Whatever you do, go forward in some way, some fashion, because the tools are all there." And I think a year plus down the road, we as auctioneers, as benefit auctioneers, as people in front of a stage, in front of a camera, in front of a combination of both, we have a better sense of how to do this now. So to all those nonprofits thinking about, oh, what am I going to do? Call Patrick, call me, and we'll
Yeah,
figure it. We'll,
absolutely.
we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. It's the tools are there. Put it that way.
Yeah, the tools are here, and it's funny you say that, George, because they call and many people, I think they think somewhat it is a self-serving answer that we as benefit auctioneers tell a group, hey, please don't. I mean, don't cancel, because cancel is just, as far as I'm concerned, it's just taboo. I think it's a death sentence for that event, and it's a bad deal because we've proven since March of 2020 that people still want to support nonprofit organizations. And we've proven the virtual model will work. And we've proven that the hybrid model can work. And so when you cancel an event, in my opinion, it becomes really hard to capture those dollars. And I ask nonprofits all the time, when they call and they ask those same questions you did. I say, well, let me start with one question, and that is, do you need the money?
Hmm.
And I've only had one that told me no, we're okay. And I said, okay, great, then you don't need me. you know but in many ways I think the decision has become more challenging, and I would like to know if you see this in your market, down there in the South and in the Atlanta area in particular. You were even in Virginia this weekend doing
Hmm.
events.
I
You
was.
travel quite around quite a bit. The I think it's more challenging for our nonprofits today than it was 6 months ago or a year ago to decide what they do. And the reason I say that is that there's, in many locations, we don't have mandates against gathering. We don't have mandates. We might have some type of instruction to wear a mask, or things of this nature. But we have such a concern in our society right now. What's
Hmm.
appropriate? Should we get people together? It was a lot easier when the government told us, no, you can't, right? I mean, are you seeing that challenge, and nonprofits really concerned about, are we going to be a spreader event? Are we going
Yeah.
to? will our group support us? Will they come together, or are we setting a bad tone? What are you hearing in the Atlanta market?
Yeah, forgive me, I was moving around. What kind of a TV guy would I be if I had light behind me?
I, I
And
wasn't going to bring it up, but
that's okay. And I'm actually upstairs on the kitchen table versus downstairs in my green screen studio because anyway, I got some other stuff going on. But the same conversation I was having with a client today. Are we going to go live? And they thought we were going to go live without any virtual. And then they put the word out, and then they start getting feedback, and there's still COVID concerns out there. And in the South, at least in Georgia, state is among the least vaccinated states in the country. And do what you will with the politics of all this, I don't think it's about that anymore. It's about your patrons feeling safe in whatever space they're at. If they believe it's their freedom to be unvaccinated, so be it. If they believe they need to be vaccinated, so be it. If there is a mandate, it is what it is individually, because I know that we've got a nationwide audience. Here in Georgia, I've been vaccinated. I've had several clients who are asking folks to show vaccinations, and there's some pushback to that. But it is not an easy decision because I think it's fair to say that whatever you believe about this COVID, if you don't feel safe going to a gathering in a live environment, you may not show up. And if you don't show up and you're a patron who brings the dollars and your love and your energy and your enthusiasm for the nonprofit that you care about, that's a vacuum that is not always easy to fill. So that's part of this equation where we can look at hybrid or look at virtual or live. And you mentioned something, because I think you're right, Patrick. When we first started this, it was almost a given that we were going to be all virtual. So that meant getting in front of a computer, getting in front of a camera, being in a studio. Now that we're past it and lots of folks are vaccinated and lots of folks are free to go about and others are still concerned, there's a lot of what ifs. What if somebody gets sick? What if the same what ifs we've had before, but under different circumstances which have allowed more freedom? But with that freedom have come some responsibilities. And I think that's kind of the rub, because these nonprofits, they don't know what to do. The one in Virginia, I was just in Virginia, and yay, Boys and Girls Clubs of the Virginia Peninsula in Newport News. They did a interesting thing. They held our gala outside at a yacht club, and it was all outside. And I think everybody felt more at ease because we had plenty of room to social distance, and there was not that cooped up feeling. And thank God the weather cooperated, and it was a beautiful setting. But I'm seeing, and I think you've seen also, that more and more folks are opting for wide open spaces, if you will, outside space. That really worked, and it changed the dynamic of it from the point of view that we were outside, and we actually got started in a timely manner. And I'll give kudos to the organizers, Susan Cookman, you rock, because they put it together in a way that it made sense. So we got to it on time. We were safe. It was a great success. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it is more confusing for folks. And in a state like Georgia, where the doors are more wide open and we don't have what you have on the West Coast, I think the lines are even more blurry, because I believe in Oregon, you folks are pretty stringent on what you can and can't do, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah. I mean, we're asked to wear masks, both indoors and outdoors. Outdoors in a gathering environment, right?
Yeah.
If it's more than 100 people, they want you to wear a mask outdoors if you're in close quarters. Vaccinated or unvaccinated, right? And it's a social issue that I don't know that any of us have the answer to, George. But I think we as benefit auctioneers have the solution, right? And that is, I've said all along, let's start with virtual when we plan these events, and let's add an audience as society allows, right? And not the government, but society. And there's some benchmarks as we go along and do that we need to be aware of. Virtual doesn't get canceled, period. I can do virtual just like I'm sitting here and you're in
Hmm.
Atlanta. I did one the other night with Peter Jacobson from the PGA Tour and NBC, and Peter was in his home in Rochester, New York, and I was in a studio in Portland, Oregon, and it was fabulous, right? Uh, and that was a pure virtual. We've done some hybrids. We have some hybrids coming up, and I would be interested. Was there any elements of your event this last weekend? Obviously, it gets harder to do outside here in Portland, uh, kind of moving forward from this
Hmm.
point until, quite honestly, July 4th, right? I mean, if you want consistency, we're going to have some beautiful days, but it's not often. Uh, was there any virtual elements to that event that you did this weekend in Virginia?
No, it was live. We talked about virtual, but the consensus among the board was that their supporters, their patrons, the folks who they wanted to see were going to show up, and they did show up. It was a big
Yeah,
crowd,
yeah.
and people were eager to show up. They were happy to be together.
Yeah, yeah, no, and I think that's what I see. I've done a couple of in-person events here
Hmm.
in Oregon in the last month or so, and those events have been well attended and extremely well supported. We broke a record significantly in one of them, just on the paddle raise. It was
Right,
outstanding.
right.
But I guess my question is also, should we be using? I think we probably should be using some of the best practices that we learned in virtual and applying them to our gathering events to make them hybrid moving forward. First and foremost was online bidding, right? That is something that I think we saw a lot of success with in the virtual environment, and it expanded our bandwidth. It helped our nonprofits register more bidders in many cases, people who could not have attended the event if it had been in person. And I'm not sure, I don't see any reason why we wouldn't extend that into this new environment. Do you?
Well, that's an interesting point because I think even when we're past COVID, we should still have virtual on the table, some kind of hybrid. As a TV guy, for me, I'm like, okay, I can do that because I've got George Franco Productions, so I
Right.
also do video production. So I've got the gear and I get it, and I have work with some folks who do production, so we can pull that part of the picture together. So what happens is it becomes a cost effectiveness equation for a nonprofit. Do they rent the big ballroom? Okay, that's 30, 50,000, whatever it is. That's not cheap. And then the caterers, that costs money. And then on top of that, an AV crew. So all of that, I think, is the new equation that if we could find ways to make it cost effective for these folks that say the value proposition is here, because if we are streaming video and we're connecting folks in a hybrid virtually, and there are enough people, patrons at home or elsewhere, that are going to contribute to the cause, then I think it's worth it. For example, the Himalayan Children's Charity is one of my favorites. When we did a virtual last year, we had people in London, we had people in Nepal, we had people in Italy, we had people in Germany, we had people in Georgia, we had people in Florida and other places. And it didn't matter what time frame those folks were at, they knew when we were going to go live and they tuned in. So I think if you've got an international nonprofit like that, that across the country, across the world, you can make connections, then I think it behooves you to stretch those wings. I think if you're a solely local nonprofit, that if you say you're in Gwinnett County and your base is in Gwinnett County, Georgia, and everybody's in Gwinnett County, Georgia, and you're going to have 200 people show up and there's going to be 30 people that don't make it, then I think that's a different
Yeah.
scenario. I think it depends on what the scenario is of who the folks are, where they're located, are they going to tune in or not. The other part of this equation, I think, and this is where I go, okay, boomer, the younger folks. The younger folks may not want to show up for a 3-hour gala. It may not be their thing, but they may be real happy to go, sure, I'll do that, and then join you virtually because they may care for the cause. And I think that this younger generation is well connected to lots of social issues. There are lots of society conscious driven issues now that I think this younger generation has embraced, and that they look at corporations as having more than just making money, but making dollars for a cause with some kind of impetus behind it that says we're improving our world. And I think if you can tap into that and you can use this method of collecting funds through whatever nonprofit you're with, and then I think that that younger generation still has a way forward. And as they get older and make more money and have more assets, then maybe we'll, but by that time I might be in the grave. I don't know.
Not you, not you. Hey, and I think it can be incorporating these things are not you make some great points about the feasibility, right? And the
Yes.
cost issues. And that's something that I've been sensitive to. So I feel like you have different levels, and it definitely has to return on investment, right?
Mm-hmm.
For most auction platforms now that we're using in the benefit world, there's no additional cost to online bidding. So
Right.
when I think about that, I think that's the base entry level, right? I'm a huge fan of Octria, as you know, and the success that I've had with working with them over this year and a half and really getting to know their software. They don't charge any extra to turn on online bidding, right? So I look at that and I say, hey, I think we also could generate more money for our nonprofits if we have a week of bidding versus 60 minutes at a social hour.
Yes,
bidding
I
on
agree.
paper bid sheets, right? And that doesn't cost anything. The golden question is exactly what you said, which is, can we, if we broadcast this, there is additional cost, and it costs more to broadcast on site at a venue than it does in the
Much more.
studio or remotely like we're doing right now. So I think you really have to gauge whether that makes sense financially. I 100% believe and agree with you. And then I want to touch base on some of your comments about the different generations, because I think you're right on, and I think it may not even be gender or generational based. I think it might be just lifestyle based across the spectrum, and that is, I think that there are people who have adapted and embraced this new environment, that they do Zoom calls, that they'll watch a live stream, that they're used to doing things on their phone. And the days of deciding that I want to spend my Saturday starting at 5 o'clock and getting coat and tie on, getting that new dress
Mm-hmm.
on, and driving to a venue and being there until 10 o'clock at night. I don't know. I can get social interaction other ways, right? And I think the weekends have become more valuable than ever to individuals and families, and even in a work at home environment, I think it's people are really valuing their weekends. So I think to be able to offer those options to folks is something that we have to consider as we move forward. Would you
Yeah.
agree? Or
Absolutely. As far as those options, I like the ease of it. If we can put it on a laptop and then throw it onto a big screen, and you've got a watch party, and some people are at home, some people are at the event, and we connect them hopefully as effortlessly as we can, and there's less lag time. And I like to look at this, Patrick, as putting on a show, if you will.
yeah,
I come out of TV, so I still think in that way. I've produced remote shows. I've been on remote locations. And for me, if we're doing a virtual hybrid and there are some folks in a studio or a live environment with maybe 50 to 100 people and then everybody else at home, I like to use the cameras and the energy of a broadcast as an impetus to boost the fundraising, to boost the energy, because to me, energy equals generosity. Generosity equals dollars. And if you've got that energy and you go into an event and it's a gala and you treat it as a gala, and by the way, cameras are here, I think it's a different energy and a different spin than if you go into a gala and you're telling your audience after everybody's eaten, nobody wants to be seen on TV
Yeah,
with
no,
stuff
we're
in
not.
their mouth. After everybody's eaten, say, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be live in 10 minutes, in 5 minutes. Stand by. We got 2 minutes. 3, 2, 1. You're live. And then we go on the air and we're live. I mean, treat it like that. And it's a beginning, middle, and end. And we provide a little entertainment. You connect the people at the live event with the people at home. I think it's a really exciting time for fundraising because whatever happens to COVID, the landscape has changed.
Yeah.
The landscape has changed, and I think those who embrace it are going to do well, not just from the fundraising side, but also in connecting the dots socially. You know, Patrick, I like to say that I may be a caveman, but I'll never be a dinosaur. No, you
Well,
know,
yeah, I mean,
and
exactly, and I think you hit on some great points there, George. I mean, I think we have an opportunity to revolutionize
yeah,
the
I
the
agree.
gala experience, right?
Totally.
I mean,
That's the way at least that's the way I'm looking at it.
yeah, I
And
think the way you talked about it, and it's similar to the way I've described it. A couple of things. First and foremost, I love the virtual from a standpoint that it eliminates any barriers to entry. In other words,
right,
people don't have to buy a ticket. People don't
right.
have to. I think we can reach an audience that maybe we haven't reached in the past. I think we all, and when we do the hybrid, we do that same thing. But I think it's also as we have a quote limited audience that's a hand selected audience, and they're treated to more of a VIP experience.
Hmm.
And quite honestly, that VIP experience could actually cost that nonprofit less than what they were spending before to have a room full of 400 people and serve them filet mignon. We could take 50 people or 100 people
Right.
and really host them to a very nice cocktail hour, bring them into the quote studio, and they watch the show. Everybody, I mean, think about when you were in the news media, if you could have had somebody come and sit in the studio and watch you do the news. I know it wasn't exciting to you because that was your life, but that would have been a huge deal to some people, right? And
Sure.
how many times did the executives bring in advertisers and let them watch what you guys were doing? I mean,
Oh
it's
gosh. Oh, many times.
yeah, it's magical.
Not just as a reporter, but weekend anchorman in other markets. And oh gosh, I don't know how many times we'd see, the Boy Scouts troop come in or Mrs. Smith's class come in. People love the environment of a live setting, and if you've not been around TV studios, I miss it. I really do. There's an
Yeah,
energy and a charge that happens because of this live environment. And I think if we can kind of transfer that to a gala setting, then I think you also bring in that energy and the charge to the fundraising. I get it. It's not for everybody. Some people are going to go, "What is he talking about?" And we're not going to do TV. We're fundraising. It works for me.
yeah,
It works for me, and I can offer that to the clients. But let me clarify. By dinosaur, I meant that in television, I remember when it was film going to tape. People are like, film, videotape. And I remember when it was videotape going from videotape to computers, nonlinear, which everybody has. You can edit on your phone now. And along the way, there were people who said, "Oh, I'm not going to do tape," and they were the dinosaurs of film. And there were people who said, "I'm not going to do computers," and they were the dinosaurs of tape. And now there are fundraisers and nonprofits. If they are insisting on saying, "I'm not going to do virtual," do you want to be a dinosaur? That's what I mean by a
yeah,
dinosaur, because technology will come around and it will change our world. And if we don't embrace it, and even better than that, embrace it and shape it to help our nonprofits and help our clients, then I think we're doing a disservice, not just to ourselves, but to our nonprofits. And at least I feel that in my heart and soul. But you know as well as I do that it's not that easy to convey to people. Some
yeah,
people are saying, "But we don't want to do that. This is how we've always done it."
yeah, yeah.
So I don't know.
Yeah, it's
We'll see.
yeah, it's definitely interesting, and I mean, I think the learning curve, the hill went straight up here for the last 18 months, right?
Yes,
And
yes.
I often say that first night that I got a call on March 9th, telling me that the event on March 11th was going to live stream, and I asked uh, executive director on the other side. Can you spell that for me? Is that one word?
And what is that?
Yeah, and YouTube, is that one word or two? And now, I'm live streaming 3 times today. I did a kickoff show just before this. I'm on with you right now, and then this evening I'm doing a virtual fundraiser, all from right here in my home studio. I can't imagine that I would have ever even considered thinking that was possible or made sense 20 months ago, right?
And yet, that new equation that we have figured out makes sense now, and you see how the cobblestones and the little puzzle fits together now. And it's not as much as putting a square peg in a round hole anymore. Now they're starting to fit better, and the pieces are coming together better, and the technology and the software and the lag and the finesse of it all has made it easier, and the flow of a show, the flow of an event, I think will only get better over time, and I think we're going to see more professionally produced events. And there are folks out there who are in the AV world who are also kind of chasing this bug, who are trying to produce from that point of view. So I think it behooves us as benefit auctioneers to be ahead of the curve and not behind it, and also not be at the mercy of somebody else. I'd like to know what's going on.
Yeah, no, and I think that's incredibly powerful. I mean, one of the additional things, and I think you can recognize this and have incorporated it into what you've done, is we have an opportunity in these shows to really showcase the work of the nonprofit in a totally different way than we ever did before, right? I mean, I don't know what your formula was, but I used to see at least one 4-minute video that would go right before the paddle raise, the fund and need, the special appeal, right? And that was the only time that you really got to look inside of the organization. Today, I'll do a virtual, have 12 different videos in it. A lot of them are only 60 to 90 seconds, but it really gives the viewer an opportunity. So I think these become somewhere between a telethon and a documentary, right? And someone with your skill set and your production company, this has to be right in your wheelhouse.
Well, I hope so. I like to call myself an auctiontainer, and I think it fits right now because we are providing auctiontainment. Literally, we're asking them to watch our show. And when you're asking somebody to watch your show and fundraise at the same time, you're competing against Matamodio on Jeopardy. And I'm like, I'll probably turn to Jeopardy. I mean, that guy's running like a big fish. It's amazing. But my point is there are so many other things that are yanking at us when we're at the home base and we're sitting in front of a TV or a computer and the phone goes off, somebody is reading their email, the wife's calling, the cats are going crazy, the dog's running around, the children, whatever will distract you, the distractions are there. So for us to grab that attention, I think it takes it to a different level, because when we're at a live gala, we've got them there, and that's whatever they may or may not be paying attention, and you got to work the crowd down, but at least they're in space, in that same space. When they're in a virtual space, we're reaching out past that camera and trying to bring them in. So that's up to me. That's a whole different world.
Yeah. No, it's fabulous stuff. What if you could make a really short list, maybe 3 items, and you were talking to your clients about how to approach this new world? What would the top 3 things that you would want to drive home be for them?
Well, first and always is who's on your team. Well, first, I used to think there were other things, but for me, the first item is who are your patrons? Who's going to show up? We've got this fundraising gala. Some will be live, some will be virtual. How many people are you going to get there? Are they committed to the cause? That's always the first priority, because if they're not there, then we can have all the great stuff, but if they're not there, but assuming the people are there, then number 2 for me is who is your team? And sometimes I'm more involved than others. I wish I was involved all the time. By the teams, I mean, who's collecting the funds virtually with what software platform. Who is on your AV team and how do they gel and mesh with the software that collects the funds? Who is your live team that is out there with the auctioneer and your bid spotters and the crowd? I see three teams right now. One team is the web team to facilitate the fundraising and the chat online like we're doing now. This one team, somebody to be on StreamYard, somebody to be on Octria or Paybe. I like Paybe or
Yeah,
Paybe.
absolutely. Baby, great
Yeah,
company.
I like Paybe. Needy heads up. I
Yeah.
like Paybe. And there's some event.gives and Qtego. There's some I think powerful softwares, but whoever is on that team needs to manage that software. The second team is whoever's on the AV team, who's manning the cameras, who's manning the audio video. You can hire a team to do that. Most people do, but as long as they know how to connect with the other team. And the third team is who is at your live event. And I think they're three separate and distinct teams. I like to look at this, and I don't always get this way, but for me, if I have my druthers, if I can liken this to a newsroom setting, you got the boss. He's our news director. We've had many a news director sit back and say, "Go get me the story, George."
Yeah.
Okay, and this is what I want. So the news director is the executive director of the event, and they give us this is our look. The executive producer is the person who says, "Okay, who's on team one? Who's on team two? Who's on team three? I've got my finger on everything. I know what everybody's doing." And then it filters down to all the individual teams. And I think if you've got this flow chart of responsibilities and direction, I think it'll go a lot easier than trying to have this. I think at the beginning, and I still see it a lot, there's a mishmash of people who the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing. And so I think there needs to be coordination. So first the people, second the teams. Oh, and the third one, I suppose it would be the cooperation and the the how are our wheels turning. Some some teams, I think, uh, one person does too much. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I like to see a big team effort because it's not just about putting on the event. There's a lot going on behind the scenes. So,
Right.
but I don't know if that addresses your questions. But I'm talking from the virtual hybrid space.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree with everything you said. I think first and foremost, you must know your audience if you're going to
Yes.
raise money. Okay. And we've got to provide a product that will motivate them to give more than they necessarily would traditionally. Uh, Second, the team. I can't agree more that the team is more important than ever. I think back to pre-COVID, and I think to myself, I really didn't care what auction platform my client was using for the software, right? Because I was there to call bids, and my recorder was going to record it, and going to hand them a sheet that told them what I sold and
Yeah.
who I collected money from, and I was out of it. That was their problem, right? Today, I am 100%. I've actually considered putting in my contract that I have I have to have some input on that. And there's certain providers that I'll work with, and certain providers that I have no interest in working with,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
And I think those your team concept could not be more important, in that those people all have to work together. I think we talk a lot about in the auctioneer community having some go-to vendors. We have an auction
Hmm.
platform that we prefer. We know that it works. We also have an AV crew that we
Hmm.
believe in, that we trust, that we know when we show up, they're going to be prepared. They're going to, we're not going to be surprised. They're going to have the right equipment, and it's going to work, right? Uh, the only thing that I would say, my third one, is content. And
Hmm.
I think that
Yeah.
we have to have more of a program today than we ever used to have, right? I mean, it used to be, hey, we're going to have a social hour, we're going to move everybody in, we're going to have the invocation, we're going to, the executive director is going to get up and say 5 words, and the president's going to say 5 words, and then uh, we're going to eat chicken, and then we're going to come back, and the auctioneer is going to pull a raffle and sell some live items and do a paddle raise, and then the bars are still open or whatever. It was a pretty standard,
Hmm.
you know. But today, when we got to keep people's attention sitting in front of a computer screen or even on their big screen TV, I mean, we're competing with Netflix today. We're competing with all sorts of broadcast opportunities that people have. I think it's content. So knowing your audience, putting that team together,
Yep.
and then that content.
Content absolutely king.
Yeah,
And funny about the content because it also provides some really touching moments that can spur your fundraising in different ways that maybe we don't see at a live event. Because, for example, Joshua's Wish, a cancer fundraising for young children with cancer, and Joshua, bless his soul, passed away. His parents wanted his death to mean something. And we would do the event, and it was beautiful. But when we did the event virtually, we had these incredible videos of the kids. Oh my God, I was, oh, stop crying, George. It just got to me.
yeah,
And if we can capture those moments that actually become kind of more intimate when you see it on a large screen, small screen in your ears, there's a different kind of connection that can also take place. And if we can understand that, then I think it works. I mean, in TV news, puppies and children, and I mean, there are things that work. And I still say it's TV. I know we're doing the
yeah,
web, but to me, it's TV, and we're
yeah.
putting on a show and doing a broadcast. I don't even think of it otherwise. And how do we grab the audience? And same thing with storytelling. It's not about the statistics, it's about the people. So when it comes
Right.
to content, it's all about how do you touch them where it matters.
Well, and the format is different enough, George. I think for the nonprofit friends that are listening to us now, I think it's important to realize our giving is not as segmented as it was in a gathering event. Okay, and what I
Hmm.
mean by that is if we're doing a fund to need and I'm asking for donations at the $5,000 level, that takes about 30 seconds. And that is the only 30 seconds that we're going to ask for $5,000 donations in the entire evening. Okay. When we incorporate virtual, we incorporate online giving, and we incorporate online bidding, and we incorporate people in the room also. Now all of a sudden they can give whatever amount they want at whenever they want. Okay. And we need to incorporate that ask deeper into the content of the program. We
Hmm.
have to ask people to support us more times than we did in the other environment. And I think so many times I've seen nonprofits make the mistake of bringing, taking their event virtual. And I said that tongue in cheek, taking their event virtual, because I would tell them, we're going to create a new event and it happens to be virtual, right?
Hmm.
Because too many times I see folks trying to recreate what they did in person on virtually, and it fails in what I've seen. So
Yeah.
I think it's incredibly powerful. George, I don't want to take all your time, but I want to acknowledge some of the folks tuning in. Hey, looky here, there's some legends in the auction industry. Mike Brandley tuning in
Oh
today.
my gosh.
Yeah, yeah, you know Mike. You've
Of
taken classes
course.
from Mike. Mike is
AARE, Mike, it's coming in, I promise.
yeah, yeah, no, Mike is one of the greatest. And then one of my favorites, David Whitley, tuning in today. Thanks so much for the like, David.
Powerful leaders. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
another legend in the auction industry, and our good friend Lori Snyder Hockman down in Boca Raton with Octria. I know she put on a webinar earlier today talking about building the website in Octria, and she does just phenomenal work for our friends there. And then Denise is with one of our nonprofits that I happen to serve on the board with, the First Tee of Greater Portland and the Campbell course. So it's a great audience, and folks are sharing what they know. And George, I can't thank you enough, buddy. I mean, this is
Oh, my pleasure.
you and I could talk for days, right? I mean, I love hearing your history and your background. And someday I got to get to Atlanta and get a ride in that new car of yours.
We call her Ruby. I got
Yeah,
my, I have my vanity plate fave car.
fave car. Is that what
Yep.
you did? That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Well, George is always a great follow on Facebook and LinkedIn. Catch up with him there, George Franco, the amazing Good News Auctioneer.
Thank you,
And
Patrick. You're very
George,
kind.
George, thank you so much for joining me today, and I look forward to our next
It's
opportunity to
my
visit.
pleasure, sir. God
All right,
bless.
pal. Be good.
Thank you.
All righty, folks. Well, this has been episode 36 of Fundraising BIDness Talk. Can't thank you enough for tuning in. We're live every Wednesday at noon right here talking about the fundraising auction business. If you missed the program today, want to catch up on any of the 36 episodes, go to fundraisingbidnesstalk.com. And always want to remind you, it does not matter where you start the bidding. It's all about where you finish. Folks, I hope you have a terrific, terrific day. Thanks for tuning in, and we will catch you next week.